I still remember how her hands were shaking that morning. If you had seen her eyes, you would have known she was not just a maid at all. Anna stood in the marbled foyer of Richard Donovan's mansion, her black and white uniform pressed so carefully it almost looked new, even though it was the only one she owned. The chandelier above her head was brighter than the sun outside, throwing light over the gold frames, the polished floors, the kind of rich people's silence that always made her feel too loud, even when she didn't say a word. She balanced a tray of crystal glasses against her hip, breathing slowly, counting in her head so her nerves would not show. Tonight Donovan was hosting a private dinner, something to impress a group of investors and one special guest his staff had been whispering about for days. The boss was in a mood already, and the whole house could feel it. The cooks were snapping at each other in the kitchen. The butler walked faster than usual, his measured steps turning sharp. Even the security guards talked in lower voices, as if their normal tone might set Donovan off. Anna tried to stay small, unseen. That was how she survived here. She wiped every surface twice, sometimes 3 times, even when it already shone. Every mark she erased was money for her little brother's school fees back home, every spotless glass a few more dollars for her mother's medicine. She had come from a tiny town where people still left their front doors open and neighbors shared sugar across fences. In this house, doors shut with a soft, heavy sound, and people shared nothing but orders. "Careful with that, Anna," whispered Rosa, the older maid, as they stood by the dining room door. "He's worse when he's nervous, and tonight he is very, very nervous." Anna nodded, swallowing. "Because of the actor?" she asked quietly. Rosa's eyes darted toward the end of the hallway, where men in suits moved like shadows. "Because of the money," she said. "The actor is only the cherry on top. Donovan wants these people to see how powerful he is. That is when he forgets we are human." Anna pushed a loose strand of hair back into her bun and straightened her collar. "We'll be fast, in and out. He won't even see us." Rosa gave a tired half-smile. "He always sees us, that's the problem." In the dining room, the long table looked like something out of a movie. White linen sparkling with tiny reflections, candles in silver holders, plates that probably cost more than Anna would make in 3 months. She moved slowly, placing each glass at the exact distance the butler had shown her. 3 fingers from the plate, perfectly centered, no smudges. As she reached for the last glass, the front door opened. Voices echoed through the hall, low and important. Anna heard Donovan's laugh, wide and fake, bouncing off the marble. "Gentlemen, welcome, welcome. Make yourselves at home. Tonight you're not guests, you're family." His words sounded warm, but Anna had seen the way he spoke to actual family on the phone, the way his jaw tightened when his sister asked for help, the way he turned generosity into a weapon. She focused on the glass in her hand, but curiosity pulled her head up for just a second. He walked in first, tall, tailored suit, tan skin, smile that never reached his eyes. Richard Donovan moved like a man who owned every room he entered. Behind him came 3 men talking about numbers and market shares, and then, almost casually, someone Anna recognized from 100 movie posters and late-night interviews. He walked without bodyguards, dressed in black jeans and a simple dark jacket, hair a little messy as if he had rushed to get here. His presence felt softer than the others, but somehow it drew the eye more. As the group passed the doorway, he looked around the room with quiet curiosity, like he didn't quite fit into this world of polished surfaces and sharp angles. His gaze brushed over Anna. She dropped her eyes at once, scared she had done something wrong. But in that fraction of a second, she heard him say, gently, to no one in particular, "Good afternoon," as if everyone in the hallway mattered, not just the men in suits. No one answered. Staff were not supposed to respond to guests except with "Yes, sir," and "Of course, sir." Rosa gave Anna a tiny nudge, and they continued setting the table. Dinner began an hour later. From the service door, Anna watched the men raising their glasses of red wine, laughing too loudly at Donovan's jokes. The actor, Keanu, sat near the center, listening more than talking, his eyes thoughtful, his smile small but real whenever a server passed by. The staff had been told strict rules before the guests arrived. No photos, no talking, no eye contact unless spoken to. Donovan's voice had cut through the kitchen like a knife. "Tonight is important. I need everything to be perfect. If anyone embarrasses me, I swear they will never work in this city again. Are we clear?" They had all answered, "Yes, sir," in one tired chorus. Now, as Anna poured water beside Donovan's plate, he did not even glance at her. He kept his face tilted toward the investors, telling a story about his humble beginnings in a way that made Anna's stomach turn. She knew his beginnings were not humble at all. She had seen the newspaper photos of his childhood mansion with its pool and tennis courts. But rich people like to sound self-made. It made their cruelty easier to excuse. She finished pouring and turned to leave, but someone spoke softly behind her. "Thank you." The word was quiet, but it was clear. Anna looked up, startled. It was him, the actor, watching her with calm, tired eyes. There was nothing flirtatious in his gaze, nothing heavy or expectant, just simple respect. "You're welcome, sir," she whispered, then walked away before Donovan could notice. For a few minutes, that tiny moment warmed her like a small candle in a dark room. She moved faster, lighter on her feet. Maybe tonight would pass without humiliation. Maybe she would get through this shift, take the late bus home, and video call her brother to tell him good night. In the kitchen, though, tension kept growing. The head chef was furious about a sauce that had reduced too far. The sous chef snapped at Anna for standing one step in the wrong place. Somewhere in the house, a phone rang and kept ringing until Donovan finally stormed out of the dining room to answer it, his voice slicing through the hall. "If this deal falls through, do you have any idea what that means?" Anna prepared the next tray. Coffee, small desserts, everything arranged exactly as she had been trained. But her hands were not perfect machines. As she reached for the last demitasse cup, someone bumped her elbow in the narrow kitchen doorway. The cup wobbled, spun in place, and a small wave of coffee sloshed over the edge, splashing onto the white saucer and leaving a faint stain on the silver tray. Her heart jumped. It was so little, barely a teaspoon. She wiped the tray quickly with a cloth, replaced the saucer, and checked everything twice. It looked fine. It looked good enough. But in Richard Donovan's house, good enough did not exist. When she carried the tray back into the dining room, the investors were arguing about some number with too many zeros for her to imagine. Donovan had returned, face tight, laughter louder than ever, like he was trying to cover something up. She could feel his bad mood like static in the air. Rosa had always told her, "When he is like this, walk slower, make yourself invisible." So Anna did exactly that. Step by step, she circled the table, placing a cup in front of each man. Steam curled up between them like soft white ghosts. She was almost done when Donovan's voice cut through the conversation. "Wait." Anna froze. The room went silent except for the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Her fingers tightened around the tray until her knuckles turned white. Donovan's eyes were locked on the saucer in front of him. A single dark drop of coffee had escaped the cup and rested, like a tiny stain of guilt, near the rim. He lifted his face slowly, and Anna felt the weight of his gaze like a hand closing around her throat. "What," he said, each word heavy, "is this?" "I am sorry, sir," she managed. "It was an accident. I will change it right away." "An accident?" The word seemed to insult him. "An accident?" He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the polished floor. "Do you think I invited these men into my home to show them accidents?" One of the investors shifted uncomfortably. Another cleared his throat. No one spoke up. No one ever did. Anna lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, sir, it won't happen again." He stepped toward her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the sharp tang of anger. His voice rose, no longer smooth and charming, but raw and ugly. "Of course it won't happen again, because I am this close to firing you." He held up his fingers, showing a thin slice of air. "You can't even carry a tray without messing it up. How hard can your job be? You are just a maid." Her cheeks burned. The word just landed like a slap. Just a maid, just a paycheck, just a body that cleaned and carried and disappeared when people were done with it. Donovan wasn't finished. "Know your place," he shouted, loud enough that the crystal glasses shivered. "Your place is to serve, to stay out of sight, and to not humiliate me in front of my guests. Do you understand?" The room blurred. For a second, Anna saw her mother bending over a sewing machine, fingers swollen from long hours. She saw her brother trying on his one pair of school shoes, smiling shyly. She had taken this job to give them a better life, not to be ground into the floor like dirt. But the words would not come. She could not defend herself. Her job, her visa, her family's future, all of it hung on this man's mood. "Ah, yes, sir," she whispered, throat tight. He stared at her a moment longer, breathing hard, and then waved his hand like he was swatting away a fly. "Get out of my sight, before you break something else." Anna turned, the tray trembling in her hands. The dining room door felt miles away. Every step was heavy, full of shame she did not deserve. The investors looked down at their plates. No one met her eyes. As she reached the doorway, her vision swam. Her chest ached with the effort of holding herself together. On the other side of the door was the hallway, the kitchen, the rest of her long, small life. For a heartbeat, she wondered if this was it, if this was all she would ever be. A uniform, a bowed head, a soft apology. Then she heard a chair move behind her, slower this time. Not Donovan's sharp scrape, but a quiet, steady sound. A voice spoke, calm but firm, cutting through the silence he had created. "Richard," the man said, "that was not okay." Anna stopped in the doorway, the tray still in her hands, her back to the room. The air in the dining room shifted, like everyone had suddenly remembered how to breathe. She did not turn around yet. She did not dare. She only knew one thing. The person who had stood up, the one challenging the most powerful man in the room, was the same gentle voice who had said, "Thank you," to her earlier. And now, every eye at that glittering table was slowly turning toward him. Silence in a room full of powerful people feels different. It's heavier, like the air itself is waiting to see who dares to move first. Richard Donovan's laugh died in his throat as every head at the table turned toward the man who had spoken. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm, steady tone cut through the tension more sharply than any shout. "That was not okay," he repeated, eyes fixed on Donovan, not on Anna. "She made a small mistake. You humiliated her." Anna stood frozen in the doorway, back to the room, the tray still trembling in her hands. No one ever challenged Donovan here. Not the staff, not the investors, sometimes not even the lawyers. The moment felt wrong, dangerous, like standing outside in the middle of a storm with an umbrella made of paper. Donovan's smile came back, but now it was stiff and crooked. "Come on," he said, forcing a chuckle. "It was nothing. You can't run a house like this without discipline. The staff understands that. Don't you, Anna?" Her name on his tongue felt like a warning. Anna turned halfway, enough to see him, not enough to see everyone else. "Yes, sir," she whispered. It was a reflex, automatic, like breathing. But her eyes flicked to Keanu for a heartbeat, and he saw the shame and fear there. Keanu didn't look away. "She understands fear," he said quietly. "There's a difference." One of the investors shifted in his chair. Another cleared his throat. The third stared into his wine glass like he wished he were somewhere else. No one had expected a moral argument in the middle of their expensive dinner. "Look," Donovan said, the edges of his patience showing, "with respect, you don't run this house. I do. I'm responsible for the standards here. If my maid can't carry a cup of coffee without spilling, that's my problem, not yours." Keanu leaned back slightly, but his gaze stayed steady. "You're right," he said. "It is your problem, because the way you talk to people who can't answer back, that says more about you than it does about them." A small, almost inaudible gasp came from one of the waiters standing against the wall. Rosa, watching from the corridor, clasped her hands tighter. No one had ever said something like that to Donovan in his own dining room. For a long moment, the two men simply looked at each other. One wrapped in money and power, the other wrapped in a different kind of power, the kind that came from a life lived in the spotlight yet somehow still grounded. The candles between them flickered, tiny flames reflecting in crystal and silver. Donovan broke away first, turning to his guests with a strained smile. "Forgive the little drama," he said. "Things get blown out of proportion. Anna, apologize properly and then go." Every instinct in her body told her to obey. Apologize, bow her head, disappear. That was how she kept food on the table back home. That was how people like her survived places like this. But before she could speak, Keanu's chair scraped softly as he stood up. "No," he said. "She doesn't owe us anything, you do." The word no hung in the air, shocking in its simplicity. Donovan's face went from red to pale in the space of a breath. The investors watched closely now, calculating, money on one side of the table, a global reputation on the other. "Are you threatening to walk out over a servant?" Donovan asked, disbelief dripping from the last word. "I'm not threatening anything," Keanu replied. "I'm telling you what I'm comfortable being part of. I don't sit quietly while someone gets torn apart for a stain on a saucer. Not in a house that invites me as a guest." The room had shrunk for Anna. Her heart battered against her ribs. Part of her wanted to run, to escape before Donovan's anger found a new target. Another part, small but fierce, felt something like gratitude burning in her chest. No one had ever stood between her and someone else's rage before. Not like this. One of the investors finally spoke, his voice cautious. "Richard, maybe it was a bit harsh. We're all tired. Long day. Why don't we just move on? No need to make a scene." Donovan's jaw worked as he forced himself to swallow his pride. The math was obvious. An insulted employee he could replace in an hour, or a famous guest who could make or break the image of this entire evening. He turned toward Anna with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "My apologies," he said, each syllable cold as glass. "I may have spoken too sharply. You can go back to your duties." The apology wasn't for her. It was for the men at the table and the one man still standing. But still, the words landed strangely in Anna's ears. She had never heard him say, "My apologies," to anyone in a uniform. Keanu watched Donovan for a moment, then slowly sat back down. He didn't look satisfied. He looked tired, like this was not the first time he had seen something like this, and not the first time he had had to decide whether to intervene. Anna bowed her head, murmured, "Yes, sir," and slipped out of the dining room on unsteady legs. As soon as the door swung closed behind her, the conversation inside started again, too fast, too loud, like everyone was trying to erase what had just happened. In the narrow staff corridor, the world felt smaller but no safer. Rosa hurried to her, gripping her arm. "Are you insane?" she whispered. "Do you know what he'll do to you for this?" "I didn't do anything," Anna said, voice shaking. "I didn't ask him to say those things." Rosa's shoulders sagged. "You don't have to ask. Men like Donovan only see one thing when someone challenges them, the nearest person they can punish for it. And that's you, Nina." The rest of the night crawled by. Anna finished the service like a ghost, moving quietly, avoiding Donovan's eyes. If he looked at her, she didn't see it. She couldn't bear to. She focused on the familiar motions, collect the plates, refill the water, fold the napkins, like a dancer repeating steps she had learned too well. But whenever she passed near the table, she felt his anger circling her like a predator waiting for the right moment. Later, when dessert was over and coffee cups were empty and the investors drifted toward the drawing room, the butler came to the kitchen. His voice was low, but his face was pale. "Anna, Mr. Donovan wants to see you in the library." Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "He's going to fire you, maybe worse." Anna's legs felt numb, but she nodded. The card Keanu had slipped to her as he left the dining room sat in the pocket of her apron, its edges sharp against her fingers. He had pressed it into her hand quickly, away from Donovan's eyes. "If you ever need help," he had murmured. "Real help, call this number." She didn't even look at it. She had been too afraid someone would see. Now, walking down the long hallway toward the library, she felt the small rectangle like a piece of metal she wasn't sure she was allowed to touch. The library door stood half open. Donovan's voice drifted out, clipped and controlled. "Don't need drama, especially not tonight." Anna stepped inside, heart thudding. Shelves of leather-bound books rose around them, the warm glow of a green-shaded lamp turning the room into a pool of soft light. Donovan stood beside his desk, his tie slightly loosened, expression tight. And across from him, leaning lightly against one of the shelves, was Keanu. Anna stopped just inside the doorway, confused. This was not what she had expected. "There she is," Donovan said. Come in, Anna, we were just talking about you. He sounded almost cordial, and that scared her more than his yelling had. Keanu straightened and gave her a small, gentle nod, as if to say it's okay. You're not alone in this room. Donovan clasped his hands behind his back, looking between them. Our guest here seems concerned, he said. He thinks I was too hard on you earlier. Keanu didn't smile. I know you were too hard on her. Donovan's eyes flashed, but his voice stayed smooth. Well, as a generous host, I'm willing to show flexibility. Anna, I regret raising my voice, he said, forcing the words out. You work hard, I expect excellence, but perhaps my tone was unnecessary. Anna stared at him, stunned. An apology in front of the staff was one thing. An apology in private in his library with only one witness he could easily dismiss. This was something else entirely. Thank you, sir, she whispered automatically, though she wasn't sure what she was thanking him for. Donovan spread his hands. There, we're all reasonable people, no harm done, he turned to Keanu. Satisfied? Not really, Keanu said, his voice still calm. But I appreciate the effort. For a second, the mask on Donovan's face almost cracked. Then he smiled again, all teeth. You see, Anna, when I say something in anger, it's just business, nothing personal. But she knew better. It had felt as personal as a hand around her throat. Donovan glanced at his watch. Well, I won't keep you. Big day tomorrow, investors to charm. He moved toward the door, then paused right beside her, close enough that only she could hear his next words. You should be grateful, he murmured. Not everyone gets a movie star to fight their battles. His breath brushed her ear. The threat beneath the softness made her skin crawl. When the door closed behind him, the room seemed to exhale. The library grew quieter, the ticking of a small clock filling the space Donovan had left. Anna stood awkwardly beside the desk, not sure what to do with her hands. She had never been alone with a guest before, much less someone whose face she had seen 100 times on screens in cheap internet cafes back home. I'm sorry, she blurted out. I didn't mean to cause trouble for you. I know tonight is important. Keanu shook his head. You didn't cause anything, he said. He did, and he knows it even if he'll never admit it. His voice was soft, but there was a tired kind of strength in it, like someone who had carried heavy things for a long time and learned not to drop them. People like him count on you staying quiet, he added. On all of us looking away, I couldn't do that tonight. Anna swallowed hard. He might fire me for this, she said, the fear finally pushing its way to the surface. I send money home every month. My brother is in school because of this job. My mother is sick. I don't have savings. I don't have anyone here. He listened, really listened, eyes steady on her face, not drifting around the room the way Donovan's always did. What's your brother's name? He asked. Mateo, she said, surprised by the question. And your mother's? Elena. He nodded like he was storing the names away. They're real people, he said quietly. You're not a uniform, you're not a mistake on a saucer, you're their whole life. Anna pressed her lips together, trying not to cry. She had worked so hard not to need anyone's kindness that having it suddenly offered felt almost painful. I can't fix everything, he went on, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a second card, this one with a different logo. But I know people who help workers in situations like this. Legal advice, support, someone to talk to who isn't afraid of guys like him. He held the card out. If he threatens you, if he fires you, if he does anything that feels wrong, call this number, please. Her fingers trembled as she took it. The print was simple, the name of an organization she didn't recognize and a phone number. It didn't look like much, but it felt like holding a tiny door in her hand, one that might lead out of the prison she hadn't even realized she was in. Why do you care? She asked before she could stop herself. You don't even know me. Keanu's gaze drifted for a moment like he was looking at something far away that only he could see. Because once, he said slowly, I watched someone I loved get treated like this. I was young. I did nothing. I've had a long time to regret that choice. I can't go back, but I can do better now. The honesty in his voice settled over her like a quiet promise. She tucked the cards into the hidden pocket inside her uniform, the one she usually used for bus tickets and grocery lists. "Thank you," she said, and this time she meant it fully. A small, tired smile touched his mouth. "Take care, Anna," he said, "and remember your worth doesn't depend on how men like him see you." She left the library with her chest feeling both heavier and lighter at the same time. Rosa caught her in the hallway, eyes searching her face. "You're still here," she breathed. "What did he say?" Anna shook her head. "Nothing I can explain," she murmured. "Not yet." That night on the crowded bus home, she kept her hand over the pocket where the cards rested, like she was protecting a fragile secret. The city lights blurred past the foggy windows. Somewhere out there, Donovan was drinking with his investors, laughing too loudly. Somewhere else, Keanu was probably in a quiet hotel room, already halfway to another city, another set, another story. Anna's story, though, was not done with either of them. Early the next morning, she arrived at the mansion gate, the winter air biting her cheeks. The security guard wouldn't quite meet her eyes. "Morning, Carlos," she said, forcing a small smile. He shifted on his feet. "Morning, Anna," he cleared his throat. "Mr. Donovan wants to see you in his office, right away." Her stomach dropped. "Is there a problem?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Carlos looked like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. "You should go," he said softly. "He's in a mood." The walk to Donovan's office felt longer than it had the night before. The house was quieter now, the echoes of last night's party hidden under the fresh smell of polish and coffee. Anna knocked on the heavy wooden door, then stepped inside when she heard his voice. Donovan sat behind his massive desk, a pen in his hand, a thin envelope lying directly in front of him. His eyes were cool, almost bored. "Close the door," he said. She did. He didn't ask her to sit. "I've decided," he began, "that your services are no longer required here." The words hit her like cold water. "Sir, please, I—" He raised a hand, cutting her off. "You embarrassed me in front of important guests. You allowed a spectacle to happen. This house runs on discretion. You broke that." "I didn't say anything," she protested, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "I just stood there, he—" "Exactly," Donovan said. "You stood there. You let him make me look like some kind of monster in my own home." His smile was thin, dangerous. "I can't have staff who bring that kind of attention. I'm being generous, Anna. Most people would fire you on the spot with nothing." He pushed the envelope across the desk. "That's 2 weeks' pay. Sign this paper and you'll get it. It says you resign voluntarily and you won't talk to anyone about what goes on in this house." Her eyes burned, the room blurred at the edges. "Sir, my family—" "Is not my concern," he said, his tone flat. "Your visa, your references, your future work in this city, those, however, are very much my concern. And believe me, I can make all of them disappear if you make this difficult." The threat sat between them, ugly and real. Anna stared at the envelope, then at the paper. Her hand drifted to the inside of her uniform, feeling the edge of the card tucked against her heart. She could sign and walk away quietly, carrying her shame with her. Or she could refuse and risk everything: her job, her legal status, her family's survival. Donovan clicked the pen open and set it on the paper in front of her. "It's a simple choice," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You can leave here with a little money and no trouble, or you can make this much, much harder on yourself." Anna looked down at the pen, then up at the man who had shouted her into the floor the night before. Behind his polished desk and expensive suit, he looked suddenly small, like a child holding a magnifying glass over an ant and calling it power. Her fingers brushed the card again. Somewhere in the city, a phone would ring if she dialed that number. Somewhere, people who were not afraid of him were waiting. Her hand reached out, hovering over the pen. Outside the tall office window, the city moved on, unaware that in this quiet room, a young woman's future balanced on the thin line of ink she was about to draw. And just as her fingers closed around the pen, her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. An unknown number lighting up the screen with a call she had not expected, at the exact moment she needed it most. The phone buzzed again in Anna's pocket, insistent and out of place in the thick silence of Donovan's office. He frowned. "Turn that off," he said. "You're in a meeting." Her hand closed around the phone. Unknown number. Her heart hammered. For a second she thought of ignoring it, of signing, of walking out quietly the way he wanted. Then she remembered the calm voice in the library. "If he threatens you, call this number, please." "Just a moment, sir," she whispered, surprising herself. Before she could lose her courage, she answered the call and lifted the phone to her ear. "Anna," a woman's voice said, firm but gentle. "My name is Maria. I'm with Worker Justice Network. A friend of yours contacted us last night and asked us to check on you this morning. Are you safe right now?" Anna's eyes shot to the paper on the desk. Donovan's gaze narrowed. "Who is that?" he demanded. She swallowed. I'm in my employer's office," she said into the phone, ignoring him for the first time since she'd started working here. "He's asking me to sign something. If I don't, he says he'll make trouble for my visa and my references." Maria's tone sharpened with quiet authority. "You don't have to sign anything today. You have the right to read any document first and the right to legal advice before you agree. Are you alone with him?" "Yes," Anna whispered. Donovan stepped around the desk, his face darkening. "Hang up that phone now," he snapped. "This is private business." On the other end, Maria didn't raise her voice. "Anna," she said, calm and steady, "I'm outside the gate with a colleague. We're here because someone believed your situation was serious. I'm going to ask you one question, and you don't have to explain anything. Do you want us to come in and help you, or do you want us to leave?" The world narrowed to that single choice. Donovan's hand hovered inches from the phone, his jaw tight. "Think very carefully," he hissed. "You walk out of this room without signing, and I will make sure no one hires you again." Fear crashed over her in a hot wave. Her mother's tired face, Mateo's school uniform, the money she wired home every month, all of it hung on this moment. She could still give in. She could hand him the pen, bow her head, and accept his version of her worth. Her fingers tightened around the phone. I want you to come in," she said. The words were small, but they were the bravest words she had ever spoken. Donovan's eyes flared. "Give me that," he snapped, grabbing for the phone. Anna stepped back too fast for herself, almost bumping into the wall. "No," she said, voice shaking but clear. "This is my phone." Maria's voice came through, unwavering. "We'll be at the front door in 30 seconds. Do not sign anything. You are not alone." Donovan stabbed at his desk phone, barking into the intercom. "Carlos, do not let anyone in. Send them away. Now." From the speaker, the guard's voice came back, uncertain. "Sir, they say they're from a legal aid organization, and there's someone with them. A guest." Something flickered in Donovan's expression. A bad premonition. Before he could respond, a knock sounded at the office door. Not timid, not loud, just firm. The handle turned and the door opened a few inches. "Richard," the butler's voice carried in. "You have visitors." Into the doorway stepped a woman in a dark blazer with a thin folder in her hands, and beside her a man in a simple black jacket, hair a little messy, eyes steady. Keanu offered a small nod, as if they had met in far less dramatic circumstances. "Morning," he said quietly. "I hope we're not interrupting anything important." Donovan's composure cracked for the first time. "What is this?" he demanded. "You brought lawyers into my house." "I brought help," Keanu said, "for someone who needed it." Maria stepped fully into the room, her colleague behind her. She opened her folder with practiced calm. "Mr. Donovan, my name is Maria Ortega," she said. "I'm with Worker Justice Network. This is Anna's place of employment, yes." "This is outrageous," he snapped. "I didn't invite you, you're trespassing." "Actually," Maria replied, "Anna invited us by asking for our help, and your security allowed us in. We're here because we have reason to believe she's being coerced into signing away her rights." Anna stood very still, watching two worlds collide in front of her desk. The expensive power she'd been afraid of, and a quieter power she hadn't known she could call on. "There is no coercion," Donovan said tightly. "She made a mistake. I'm offering her a generous severance. She's free to refuse, of course." Maria's eyes slid to the paper on the desk. "Is she free to keep her job if she refuses?" she asked. He hesitated. That's not how this works. I decide who works here. And is she free to keep her visa status if she refuses? Maria pressed. Because we have testimony that you threatened to make it disappear if she didn't sign. Donovan's mouth opened, then shut. His gaze cut to Anna, furious. Are you calling me a liar? I'm saying, Maria replied evenly, that threatening someone's immigration status to force them to sign a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for wages they're already owed is illegal. So is denying references as punishment for asserting basic rights. She slipped a document from her folder. You run several companies, Mr. Donovan. You know the word retaliation. You also know what it looks like when it ends up in court or in the news. His eyes flicked involuntarily to Keanu. Keanu didn't move closer. He didn't posture or raise his voice. He just stood there, a quiet witness whose name alone could turn a private humiliation into a very public story. Look, Donovan said finally, forcing a brittle smile. This is a misunderstanding. Emotions ran high last night. I was disappointed. I may have spoken too sharply, but we're handling it in-house. Last night was recorded, the butler said suddenly from the hallway. His voice shook, but he took a small step forward. The cameras in the dining room, the audio, it's part of the security system. Donovan spun toward him. You will delete that, he snapped. The butler swallowed. I already made a backup. In the doorway behind him, Rosa appeared, eyes wide but determined. She gripped the edge of her apron. Another maid hovered at her shoulder. For the first time, Anna saw something like quiet defiance in their faces. We heard everything, Rosa said softly. We've heard it for years. The room shifted. Donovan was no longer just a boss scolding a maid. He was a man standing in front of witnesses, documents, and a lawyer who knew exactly which words mattered. Maria closed her folder partway. Her tone gentled but did not weaken. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Donovan, she said. You're going to withdraw that resignation document and any threats attached to it. You're going to provide Anna with a neutral written reference confirming her employment and performance. You're going to pay her every cent of wages and overtime owed. And you are going to do it without a gag order. And if I do, he asked, though he already knew. Then we represent her, Maria replied. With a credible witness, she nodded toward Keanu, multiple staff testimonies, security footage, and a very public interest in how you treat the people who work in your home. Silence pressed in, heavy and complete. Anna could almost see the calculation running behind Donovan's eyes, the cost of pride, the cost of surrender, the cost of a headline he would never escape. Finally, his shoulders dropped the smallest fraction of an inch. Fine, he said through his teeth. She wants to leave. Let her go. I'll sign whatever you want. Just keep this quiet. Maria gave a slow, deliberate nod. We don't promise silence, she said. We promise fairness. Whether this stays private depends on how you behave from this point on. He glared at Anna as if she had orchestrated all of this. But for the first time since she had met him, his anger did not reach her the same way. It stopped at a line she had finally drawn. Minutes later, with the lawyer's steady guidance, the papers were rewritten. The new document said nothing about her being a problem, nothing about secrecy. Just a simple confirmation of employment and a clean release with proper pay. Anna, Donovan said tightly, pushing the paper toward her. Sign, take your money, and get out of my house. She looked at the words. They were not a trap anymore. They were a key. She signed slowly, not with the desperation of someone begging to be spared, but with the calm of someone who had chosen to walk away. When it was done, she folded the reference letter with careful hands. Rosa met her in the hallway and pulled her into a fierce hug that smelled of soap and onions and years of swallowing fear. I didn't know we were allowed to fight back, Rosa whispered, voice breaking. Me neither, Anna replied, but we are. At the front door, Keanu waited quietly. No cameras, no entourage, just a man in a simple jacket who looked relieved. You did that, he said as she approached. You and Maria did, Anna answered. He shook his head. We opened a door, you walked through it, that's the hard part. For a second she just looked at him, memorizing the kindness in his tired eyes. Thank you, she said, for seeing me last night, not just as staff. "Don't thank me," he replied gently. "Pay it forward if you can. There are a lot of people like you in houses like this." She nodded, holding the envelope to her chest. "I will." He stepped back, giving her space. She walked out through the tall iron gate with her shoulders a little straighter, the cold air filling her lungs in a way that felt new. Behind her, the mansion shrank with each step. Ahead, the city opened. 6 months later, Anna's hand still shook sometimes when she poured coffee. But now it was behind the counter of a small, family-run cafe where the owner said please and thank you and meant them. 3 days a week, she also worked at the Worker Justice Network office, helping translate for new arrivals who reminded her painfully of herself on that first day. On the screen of an old laptop in the corner of the break room, Mateo grinned at her in his too big school sweater. "They put my picture on the honor roll board," he said, proud and shy. Behind him, their mother waved from her chair, the color slowly returning to her cheeks. "You did that," her mother said. "You and your stubborn heart." After the call ended, Anna turned back to the small meeting room, where a handful of domestic workers sat with nervous eyes and rough, capable hands. Maria stood at the front, explaining basic rights in clear, practical language. Anna took a breath and stepped up beside her. "I used to think I was just a maid," she told them, voice steady. "That my job meant I had to accept whatever my boss did. I was wrong. You're more than your uniform, your daughters and mothers and sisters and friends. Your work has value, so do you." Faces softened. A few women wiped their eyes quickly, pretending they hadn't. "In my old house," Anna went on, "someone powerful shouted at me to know my place. I thought my place was on the floor. Now I know my place is wherever I stand up for myself and for you." Later that night, on her way home, she passed a newsstand. A small headline on the bottom of a business page caught her eye. "Investor pulls out amid staff mistreatment allegations." There was a picture of Donovan's company building, not his face. That was enough. She didn't buy the paper. She didn't need to. Outside, the city hummed with its endless, indifferent life. Anna slipped her hands into her coat pockets. Her fingers brushed 2 worn cards she kept there still, the first one he had given her and the second from Maria. She thought of the voice that had once said, "Know your place," and the quieter voice that had answered, "That was not okay." Between them, she had found her own. Walking down the street under the soft glow of streetlights, Anna realized something she had never truly believed before. Her place was not decided by a rich man's temper or a line in a contract. Her place was wherever she chose to stand, with kindness, with courage, with her head up. And now, finally, she knew that she was never just anything again.